Hello and welcome back. All right, so in this lesson, I just want to share with you my own personal three-step editing workflow. And I don't necessarily use just one piece of software to edit my images. I use a combination of both Lightroom and Photoshop, but it doesn't matter because I can still use this three-step editing workflow even if I just used Photoshop alone and Lightroom was no longer in existence. If Adobe stopped offering Lightroom, I could still apply this three-step editing workflow to processing my photos directly in Photoshop because I can use ACR along with Photoshop in order to achieve my finished edited images. Now, having a workflow allows you to quickly and consistently edit your photos. If you don't have a workflow defined, then I would imagine you're spending more time in front of your computer editing than you need to be. So what I've done is I've categorized the type of edits that I do into three different categories, which are clean edits, custom edits, and creative edits. Then within those categories, I've determined which editing tools I'll be using in Photoshop for that stage of my workflow. And again, I can use this in Lightroom or Photoshop because I do edit my photos in Lightroom first, and then any custom type of edits that are beyond what I can do in Lightroom will be done in Photoshop. But you can also apply this information and this workflow to ACR. And that's because ACR is basically Lightroom in Photoshop, and that's how Lightroom was developed. It was first ACR in Photoshop, and then Adobe apparently decided they can make more money by packaging it into a different program called Lightroom. And of course, there are other advantages to using Lightroom over ACR as well, but we're not going to get into that in this particular lesson. So this is about Photoshop, and this is how I would use my three-step editing workflow with ACR and Photoshop. So the first thing I would do is I would bring my photos into Adobe Bridge, and then I would apply any copyright presets directly to those images in Adobe Bridge, and then I would bring them into ACR and read the histogram to adjust my white and black points, and then I would make my basic panel adjustments, which would include the white balance, the exposure, the highlight, the shadow, which is your dynamic range, and then I would adjust the clarity, vibrance, and saturation as needed. Then I have a preset that I would use to apply a tone curve and another type of edit that all images should get, and that is the lens correction. And I'm going to show you how to do that in the next section on ACR. And then if I'm not doing anything else besides a clean edit, I will then sharpen my image and apply a watermark if I'm going to be placing these photos online. Now, the other reason why I've broken these up into three different categories is because not all my photos are going to receive a custom edit, and even fewer are going to get a creative edit. So if I shoot 100 images for a portrait session, all 100 are going to receive a clean edit. And then as part of my Adobe Bridge workflow, I will have selected the best 10 to 15 images by adding 5 stars to those images, and I will do a custom edit on those, and then out of those 10 to 15, I might select another 2 to 3 images to receive a creative edit. Now, another thing I want to mention is a lot of times students will ask me, where's the best place to start my editing for my photos? Well, if you're using Lightroom or Photoshop or any other software for that matter, the answer is none of the above. Editing does not start in Photoshop or Lightroom or any other software. Editing starts in camera. Editing starts by nailing your exposure in camera, capturing the white balance properly in camera, and composing your images how you envision them in camera. So imagine out of 100 images or 1,000 images, if you did all three in camera, you nailed the exposure, you captured the white balance correctly, and you composed it or you cropped it properly in camera, how much time would you save by not having to do those three things in Photoshop? I would imagine you would save a ton of time. Not only that, you would have a higher quality image, because when you over or underexpose an image and try to fix it in Photoshop, you end up adding digital noise or artifacts or both to the image, and the more you have to fix, the more you degrade your image. It doesn't matter if you're an amateur or a professional photographer. Either way, you could still benefit from having a workflow. So having a workflow system in place will allow you to spend less time in front of the computer and more time doing the things you enjoy, like shooting or doing something else if this is just a hobby. Now, that's not to say that we don't enjoy the process of editing, but you have a choice. You could edit an image without a workflow system, and let's say you edit one image in 5 minutes, but what if you had a workflow system in place and you could edit that same image in 1 minute? You're still fulfilling your creative vision, however, you're doing it much quicker than you could without a workflow system. So let's go over some of these other types of adjustments that I'll do as part of the categories. So next we have our custom edits, and I know that I'm going to apply these particular tools first within ACR. I'm going to crop if needed, if I didn't get it right in camera or if I want to do something different creatively. I'm going to crop it first. I will apply my graduated filters, local adjustment brushes, and then I'll use the spot removal tool to do some minor retouching. Then I'll go ahead and apply the filters in a little bit more detail if I need to do something more creative versus what I've done up here. Next, I'm going to apply local adjustments. I'm going to dodge and burn the image. I'm going to remove color casts. I'm going to fix the skin, the hair, the eyes, the teeth, the lips, enhance the image overall. Then I'm going to go ahead and do some additional spot removal to see if I can retouch the image some more. If not, then at this point, I will then bring the image into Photoshop to do the more advanced retouching that I can't do in ACR. And that's when your selection tools and some of your other skills that you're going to learn throughout this course will come in handy by doing these advanced retouching. Okay, so once I've done my custom edit, I will then do a creative edit, and I can still do some of this in ACR. I can convert it to color or black and white. And if I do color, I'm going to revisit the basic and tone curve panels and my adjustment brushes to see if I can do something more creative with them. I'm going to use my HSL panel to do something more creative. I can use my split toning, detail, and effects to even do more creative work with those tools. And then with black and white, I can either desaturate the entire image or I can get more creative by using the HSL, which is going to provide me with more control over the different color channels. And then I'll re-examine the detail, effects, basic, and tone curves again to make my creative edit for the black and white image. So I've also defined my 3 categories in this way. A clean edit, to me, is something that is natural. It's clean. It's how it appeared when I took the photo. You could also call it classic or traditional. So with a clean edit, there are certain types of edits that I will apply via a preset. And again, that's the tone curve and my lens correction presets, and I can apply that to all the images because I know I like those types of edits on all my images, and there's other types of presets that I can use as well depending on the session, and this helps speed up my workflow. Now, I'm not saying it's going to work 100% of the time for all images, but it will work for the majority of my images, and I will just tweak them as needed if it's not perfect upon applying that preset straight out of the box. Now, a custom edit to me is an image that I want to enhance, make it better than what I actually seen at the time that I took the photo. For example, if I'm doing a wedding shoot in the middle of the afternoon because I don't have a choice, that's the only time the bride and groom gave me, and I'm shooting at 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon when the sun is out at the highest point, and I can't balance out the lighting between the couple and the sky is blown out and there's no clouds. Well, maybe I want to add clouds to that particular image. Well, to me, that is creating a custom edit by changing the sky with something else. Or maybe adding another type of effect to the image. Or maybe I need to remove somebody from the background of the photo because they walked into the picture at the time I took the photo, but the expression on the couple is priceless. Well, that's going to be a custom edit because I then need to remove that other person from the image. Then a creative edit is something that is not natural. I'm enhancing the image to the point where it's more artistic than realistic. But at the same time, I'm still trying to achieve a realistic look, but I'm getting to the point where it's almost unnatural because of the things that I'm doing creatively to the image. And that could be changing colors. So I could take the colors of the leaves and the trees and change them to a different color because maybe they got married in August, but they really wanted an October wedding, but they couldn't find any venues for that particular date, but they wanted those rich fall colors in their images. Well, I can do that with a creative edit by changing the green foliage to orange foliage to give them that fall look. And to me, that is a creative edit. So however you define your own workflow and your categories, if you're going to do them in categories, you have to decide what works for you. And that all depends on your own personal style and what you're trying to achieve with your creative vision. So whether you use mine exactly as is, or you can take this information and apply it to creating your own workflow, regardless, you should have some kind of workflow system in place to allow you to do your edits consistently, and that will allow you to edit faster. And again, consistent results in the long run because you're applying the same type of edits to your images in a specific order. Now, the other thing I want to mention is this is mostly for ACR. The type of work that I would do directly in Photoshop is slightly different, and it's harder to create a specific workflow because every image is different, but I will still do things in a certain order within Photoshop. But again, that all depends on the creative outcome that I want for that particular image. So this is a huge step in the right direction in creating a consistent workflow for editing my images or your images. And I would say this works for 90% of the images that I shoot. Okay, so that's my 3-step editing workflow, and I thought I'd just share that with you so you can see how I edit my images in ACR and Lightroom, and hopefully you can apply this to your own work as well. So in the next section, we're going to start on ACR. We're going to go over the preferences, the interface, and then we'll start editing images, and we're going to apply a 3-step workflow for that particular image. We're going to do a clean edit, a custom edit, and then a creative edit for that image as well. All right, so if you're ready to learn more about ACR and how to use it to edit your images, I'll see you in the next section.